The thin light of early dawn slants through the grimy latticework of the house of black and white, tracing pale lattice shadows over cold marble and warmer flesh. Beneath it, Arya Stark listens to the breathing of the sleeping dead. The faces murmuring along the quiet walls are only masks, but in the hush before Braavos wakes, she imagines they advise her in whispers. Remember Winterfell. Remember the names. She bows her head to silence them. A girl is no one, she thinks. A girl is nearly ready. Footsteps approach like the ticking of a deliberate clock. When the waif emerges from between the pillars, her soles strike stone with an economy of force that makes each echo feel measured and accusing. She is taller than Arya by half a head, her skin pale as skimmed milk beneath the flicker of votive candles, her eyes reflecting no light at all. The candle hall seems to dim around her. "You linger," she says, voice as still as stagnant water. "I listened," Arya answers, pressing linen bandage into the crook of a corpse arm, coaxing the last cloudy drops of life from the veins. The faces tell stories. Stories are lies. Lies shape masks. A twitch of the waif's lips might be amusement. "You love lies, Stark girl. You wear them poorly." Arya knots the bandage, rises. "I wear them well enough." "Show me." A long pause hangs between them, heavy with all the unspoken blows they have traded. The sticks breaking on backs and wrists, the way the waif's staff has found Arya's ribs 100 times. Today, there is no staff. Today, the waif carries a slender dagger with a handle carved from driftwood, its blade thin as sin. She lifts it with casual poise, spinning the steel once so it flashes across the candlelight like a sliver of frost. Arya's heart thuds. She bows her head because a girl must obey. She turns, feels the waif's gaze carve the air behind her. She is scanning for weapons of her own. But today, Arya wears only loose gray robes. A girl is no one, and unarmed. "Remove the corpse," the waif says. "Clean the slab. Then go to the kitchens. Cook will give you leeks to peel." Arya lifts the slack body onto a bier. The load is awkward, ribs jutting beneath sagged skin, but she has carried worse through the dark halls. As she turns her back, she feels the waif's eyes on the nape of her neck, prickling like spider silk. Fear is a constant companion, but today it is sharper, more insistent. She breathes past it and focuses on each sure-footed step. When the body is laid upon a cart bound for the baths, Arya scrubs the marble where it rested. She scrubs harder than necessary. Blood grains vanish. The stone gleams. The waif watches in silence. At last she speaks. "Tonight you will serve at the temple gate. See that you greet the supplicants with mercy." "Then?" Arya nods, but the wife's edge of a smile says mercy is a blade that cuts both ways. Night drapes Braavos in fog. Lanterns along the canals glow like captive moons, their reflections trembling in black water. Arya stands at the temple door in the gray robe and white mask of an acolyte, offering bowls to the poor who seek the gift of death. She pours sorecat milk infused with sweet sleep, accepts their last coins, whispers prayers she has memorized but not learned. The faces of the dying blur into one another. Beyond the steps, a boat drifts, oars muffled. She sees it only when a lantern shivers and the prow's curved iron lip glints. A lone figure sits within, small, cloaked, unmoving. The fog curls around them like fingers. A name rises unbidden. The Waif. No sooner does it appear than the figure dissolves into mist. Arya swallows. Her pulse beats in her ears louder than the creak of rope or groan of stone. She forces her shoulders not to tense. She is watched. She knows. By the kindly priest who stands behind the door of black and white. By the city's silent spies. By the eyes of men who wonder at a girl alone on the steps. But none of them feel like the eyes she fears. The bowl empties. Another arrives. The moon climbs, clouds drift, and the night wears into its deepest hour before lightning splits the sky. Rain hammers the temple roof and sends the beggars scattering. Arya draws the hood of her robe high and embraces the cold. When thunder rolls like distant drums, she thinks of Winterfell, of Bran clambering among broken towers, of Sansa sewing by firelight while snow piled against the windows. Memory is a wound that no face can cover, but tonight she lets herself bleed. She holds those images close as a girl might gather her own warmth about her. And in the pulse between thunderclaps, she almost forgets she is no one. Almost. A final supplicant staggers up the marble stair. His cloak is soaked. Water streams from its hem. He wears a copper mask shaped as a laughing boar, but his footsteps falter, and the laughter looks mocked by darkness. He kneels hard, hands trembling. "Mercy," he rasps. "Mercy for the guilt that devours me." Arya extends the bowl. Rain peppers its surface in silver dimples. He drinks. When the last drop passes his lips, he bows until his forehead touches the stone. Lightning flashes, and for an instant her eyes are drawn not to him but to a darker shape gliding beneath the arch of the temple gate, small and swift. When light dies, the shape is gone. The man's head thumps to one side. His breath rattles once, twice, then stops. Arya eases his body down. The copper boar mask clinks against stone. Above her, the gargoyle faces on the roof grin through the downpour. Water pours from their jaws and cascades around the steps where Arya kneels among the dead. And somewhere within the house, footsteps stir, softer than rainfall. The corridors beyond the candle hall twist like intestines. Arya carries an oil lamp to check the gutters where water seeps, for the rains have become a flood that threatens to drown the lower vaults. Alone, she listens to the stone drip, drip, drip. Somewhere farther off a door clicks shut. Air shivers as though pressure changes with a life's departure. In a side chamber, she finds an empty bed. The sheets are twisted, the pillow damp. The wife's cell. Arya's mouth goes dry. She casts her lamp around the small space. A wooden chest stands open. Inside lies a strip of coarse black cloth and a tiny vial of clear liquid stoppered with wax. Face paint remover, Arya guesses. The waif must prepare her illusions carefully. There is no sign of the waif herself. Back in the corridor, Arya sets her lamp upon the floor and crouches. She touches the stone. The chill seeps into her skin. Then she closes her eyes. In darkness, memory becomes map.doi. She recalls each nook and niche of the house. The route to the Hall of Faces, the secret trap that lifts tiles near the furnace. She turns 3 paces forward, left, right again. The stone beneath her palm seems warmer here. She pushes. A hidden door grinds open. Heat breathes out at her. She descends into a gallery walled by iron-banded barrels of oil, each smelling of burnt lilies. Flames dance in braziers. The flicker makes the air waver, and in that wavering she sees the waif. The woman is kneeling over a narrow table where a body lies wrapped in linen. Arya recognizes the curve of hip, the braid of dark hair braided tight like a rope. Hers. The shrouded corpse is Arya Stark. Shock steals the breath from her chest. Her hand flies to the hilt of a knife she does not carry. The waif's hood is thrown back. Her hair, normally cropped short, falls longer tonight, dyed almost chestnut. She peels a second face from the corpse. A sculpted mask of Arya's own features, flayed from one who will no longer need them. With careful fingers she stretches the skin against her own, smoothing edges until the seams dissolve. Arya watches her own visage float upon the wife's bones like a ghost seeking purchase. It fits too well. The waif opens the corpse's mouth with dispassionate hands. She extracts a thin strip of leather bitten between the dead teeth. Beneath it is a sliver of paper smeared with dried blood, the proof demanded by the many-faced god that payment is taken. She seals corpse lips closed again with a dab of resin. Then she lifts a silver needle and presses it into the corpse's breast, again and again, sewing the shroud shut over the stolen shell. Each stitch, a tether, each tether a farewell. Arya's heart hammers against her ribs so loudly the brazier's flames seem to pulse with its rhythm. She should run. She should scream. But sound is a betrayal of place, and panic is weakness. So she watches, silent and still, as the waif ties the final knot and lifts her. Arya's face to the light. She turns it this way and that, admiring. The girl refused to surrender herself, she whispers, voice curling soft as poisoned smoke. But the self is a gift that can be granted to another. The stolen face slides over her own and seals itself across the line of her jaw. In one breath, Arya Stark stands twice in the room, one sewn into a funeral sheath, the other alive and breathing, alive and smiling. Arya retreats slow steps into darkness. She bumps the lamp. It clatters. Oil sloshes. The waif's head snaps toward the sound. Her new mouth, the mouth that once belonged to Arya, parts in a feral grin. "Who lingers?" she calls, pitch-perfect imitation of the Stark girl's voice, as though she speaks to a mirror. No answer is foolish. Arya backs 3 more steps, then turns and runs, base of her robe flaring. She claws up the hidden stair, heart keening, but halfway the steps give onto a landing where moonlight filters through a grill. Silvery glints reveal bare feet on stone ahead. The waif moves between lantern pools with eerie grace. Her dagger gleams. "It is forbidden to take what is not offered," Arya cries, voice breaking. "You murdered me. I liberated you," the waif replies. Arya's face, Arya's tongue. "And I will wear your story well." She lunges. Steel kisses brick where Arya's shoulder had been. Sparks flare. Arya ducks low, sweeps the waif's ankle. The assassin vaults the kick, spins, drags the dagger in a glittering arc. Cloth splits and skin stings. The slice is shallow but blood blossoms, warm against Arya's side. Footsteps gather from every corridor. The kindly man's voice booms. "Seize." But the waif obeys only her own hungers. She strikes again. Arya grips her wrist, feels bones grind, twists. The dagger clatters. Yet the waif's free hand closes upon Arya's throat. Fingers tighten. "Die again." She hisses. Blood roars in Arya's ears. Dots of light explode behind her eyes. She jams her thumb under the waif's cheekbone, and rips down. Skin stretches, tears. A sheet of face peels away to reveal pale muscle beneath. The waif screams more rage than pain. Arya shoves her into a pillar. Marble chips fly. Hands seize Arya's shoulders from behind, pull her back. Dark-robed priests of the house swarm the stair, separating foes. The waif thrashes, her mask half dangling like wet parchment. Arya collapses to her knees, coughing. The kindly man kneels before her. His blind eyes regard nothing and everything. What transpires? Arya cannot drag breath enough for speech. The waif's voice spits from the shadows, broken and distorted. She coveted her name. She would not surrender it. The old priest tilts his head. "And you took what was not given." Arya Stark's death was promised. The waif snarls. "I delivered it. You broke faith." He lifts his hand, and priests drag the waif away into darkness. Her shriek echoes like metal over bone until abruptly severed. The kindly man turns to Arya. A death has been paid. A face taken. The many-faced god must be answered. Arya meets his sightless gaze. "I paid nothing. My life is mine." "Is it?" His lips curve, neither smile nor frown. "A debt remains. You must decide which name you will pay in its stead." He leaves her with those words and vanishes into corridor gloom. Arya watches lamplight glide across cold marble and feels the hall expand until she is alone at its heart. Blood trickling down her ribs. She sleeps little that night. Dreams fracture into images. Sansa smiling with eyes that are actually the wife's. Jon rising from a snowy crypt to ask, "Who are you?" She wakes tangled in blankets, soaked with sweat and fear. Candle stubs gutter in holders. Dawn's gray gloom seeps under the door. She slips from her cell before the bells toll. In the Hall of Faces she stands among pillars carved with silent witnesses. She wonders which mask robbed the waif of her own childhood, which severed a girl from her name. She wonders if once, somewhere, the waif looked upon a face and saw herself. A girl is no one. But Arya is not. She approaches the great pool at chamber's center. Water lies flat as iron glass, mirroring the vaulted ceiling and every face that watches her from above. She cups her hands, scoops water, drinks deeply. The tang of copper sings on her tongue. Something stirs within, like snowmelt meeting colder river currents. Valar Morghulis, she whispers. She dips her fingers again, but this time she anoints her brow, then cheeks, tracing half-remembered patterns of northern prayer, her mother taught by bedside lamplight. All men must die, she says, voice cracking. But first they must live. From walls of silent faces she senses no answer, yet somehow the hush feels less oppressive, almost companionable. She turns. The kindly man stands in the archway, robes dark as shadow. Beside him kneels the waif, wrists bound, face a ragged ruin where strips of Arya's features hang like torn parchment. Her real skin beneath is white, mottled. Her eyes burn. She snarls when she sees Arya alive. The priest speaks. Steal a death, lose your own. Such is the price. Yet the debt is incomplete. A life was taken from the many-faced gods collection. His head inclines toward Arya. Will you repay it with your own? Arya feels all the names thrumming behind her ribs. Mother, father, Rickon, Bran, Robb, Sansa, Jontiu. Winterfell. Nymeria. Needle's slender bite in her palm. She looks at the waif, broken but unbowed, at the priest whose mercy is as cold as the coins he lays upon the tongues of corpses. She thinks of the map of Westeros inked in her mind, names undone, debts unpaid. No, she says, I will pay with hers. Silence rings like a bell. The waif's lips peel into a snarl. She lunges, but chains yank her short. The kindly man nods as though this answer was expected. Then take her to the Hall of Truth. If life is coin, let coin be counted. Priests drag the waif past Arya. As the chains scrape, the waif spits blood-flecked words. You cannot be rid of me. I am your shadow. Wear me or I will wear you. Arya meets her gaze. Not my shadow, my lesson. The Hall of Truth lies beneath the temple crypts, an ossuary where calcite drips carved stalactites among stacked skulls. Here priests weigh lives on marble scales. Arya witnesses them strip the wife's tattered face, wash flayed cheeks with rosewater, numb the skin with blackwort before they cut. They take the wife's true visage for the vault and lay her upon a stone altar. The waif bares teeth at Arya in defiance until the silver dirk of mercy slides beneath her left ear. A single plunge, quick, hot, final. Blood sheets over marble and pools around the grooves carved to channel it away. The waif's eyes fix on the ceiling, then glaze, journey ended. Arya watches without trembling. When the priest lifts the flesh mask of the waif's real face to hang among the others, Arya steps forward. I would keep it, she says. Brows arch beneath hooded shadows. The priest tilts his head. For what purpose? To remember the debt I owe the dead. He studies her. Very well. They tan the face in a solution of ash and myrrh, then fold it into a velvet pouch. Arya ties it to her belt beneath robes. When she leaves the crypt, she does so carrying not a secret but a weight, one that will balance every step she takes henceforth. The next dawn finds Braavos washed clean by the storm. Seabirds wheel over the Titan's shadow on churning green water. Arya stands upon a quay near the Iron Bank where ships bound for Old Town and White Harbor load cargo. She wears a plain wool cloak, a knife at her hip, the pouch hidden under folds. She has left behind 3 small copper stars, her entire purse. In the house of black and white is coin for the meals she ate and the shelter she slept under. Debt paid, but not forgotten. A crewman shoulders toward her. South trade ship bound for Westeros, he growls through broken teeth. 50 stags for passage. I'll work the galley, Arya answers. He eyes her frame, wiry but strong, then nods. On board before tide turns or stay ashore. Arya steps onto the gangplank. Sea spray kisses her boots. She glances back only once. The canals of Braavos gleam beneath sunrise. The distant dome of the temple is a pearl in mist. Within its walls hang three faces. The Waif's new one, her old one, and one day, perhaps, Arya Stark's own. But not yet. Not until every name on her list lies answered. She touches the pouch at her belt. The Waif's face is light as parchment, but heavy as promise. A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell. She murmurs to the wind, and a girl remembers. Sails billow. Ropes groan. The ship eases from the dock, turning its prow toward the western horizon. Beneath her feet, the deck thrums with new purpose. Behind her, Braavos recedes into a haze of gull cries and briny air. Ahead waits a continent aflame with war and grievance. Arya Stark's replacement walks those lands already. Shadows wear her smile. But the original sails homeward. Knife honed, memory sharp, heart alive with the fierce knowledge that she has died once and lived. Now death itself must fear her. Half a day into open sea, she descends to the dim galley where pots swing over charcoal braziers. The cook, a barrel-chested Ibonese, grunts and hands her a sack of onions. Arya sets to peeling. As skins fall away, she positions the blade so reflections glint on the curved steel. Every flash a reminder. You could have disappeared. Instead, you are here. With each onion, she whispers a name to herself. Cersei, Ilan Payne, Meryn Trant, Dot, Alder Frey. The list still smolders, but now one more name lingers like smoke. The Waif. She is dead, yet her threat lives on in the notion that anyone, anywhere, could step behind Arya's eyes and see the world through stolen flesh. That fear is steel. Steel is truth. She will forge it into something lethal. The ship rolls. She finds her balance. A few crew stare. She ignores them. Onion after onion, names after names, echoes of Winterfell, after echoes of Braavos. The Waif taught her how fragile identity can be, how precious. From now on she will guard hers fiercely, not hide it beneath borrowed masks but temper it. Storm clouds gather by dusk. Wind claws the rigging. Arya steps onto the rain-slicked deck and lifts her face to the spray. Lightning veins the sky, and thunder follows like a drum. She feels alive in the tempest, rooted, real. For the first time since her mother's hands turned cold at the twins, Arya does not feel hunted. The Waif is dead. The many-faced god's account stands leveled, for now. She has purchased her freedom with a face and a choice. Below decks, the pouch at her hip swings with each wave, tapping her thigh like a pulse. It reminds her that faces are stories, and stories are power. One day she may don the Waif's features to walk unseen among enemies. But that day lies far ahead. First she must reclaim her own legend. As night descends, Arya leans against the rail. Beyond the break of water glimmer the faintest lights. Perhaps a fishing village on the Isle of Cedars. Perhaps illusion. Either way, the world is vast, and she intends to carve her path through every shadow of it. She draws her knife, turns the blade so moonlight rides its edge, and whispers, I am no one. I am someone. I am Arya of House Stark, and I remember you. The sea swallows her words, but she imagines them carrying on every crest, across every tide, until even the dead capitals hear, and shudder. Across the narrow sea, in a ruined holdfast outside salt pans, a girl bearing Arya Stark's face tends a cookfire. Refugees cluster, grateful for her kindness, for the promise of Lannister soldiers routed from the Riverlands, for the hope of safe passage. She smiles at them with the gentleness Arya herself once wore. But when she withdraws to a tumbled tower and lifts her skirts, her steps are silent, her dagger quick. In the shadows she collects names spoken in terror, and each death is offered to the many-faced god. She believes the real Arya sank beneath the canals of Braavos, another petal on the water among many. She does not know that truth has a way of resurfacing, sharp as glass in the surf, waiting for bare feet. The Waif in Arya's skin walks Westeros, but Westeros is large, and the real wolf sails homeward on storm-driven wings. When they meet, the gods will weigh which face deserves to live. Until then, the Riverlands whisper of a Stark girl who comforts the lost, and leaves only corpses where comfort fails. And in the holdfast's highest window, the stolen girl watches the moon, and wonders why its face seems fractured tonight, as though some twin of herself studies it from afar with wary eyes. She presses hand to cheek, feeling someone else's skin stretched over her own. She shivers, though the night is warm. Far away, amid roaring waves, Arya Stark does likewise, touching the pouch at her belt, and feels another tremor answer. Like mirrors across darkness, they shudder in unison, hunter and hunted, twin halves of a blade poised to meet. Days pass upon the sea. Arya scrubs decks, mends lines, stands watch in dawn's thin glow. Sailors teach her knots. She teaches them the name of every star she learned from her father on winter nights. In this exchange, she earns bread, earns trust, and reclaims something like belonging. One dusk, the captain calls her to the poop deck. He is a narrow-faced Lysine with gold rings in each ear and the voice of a gilded cat. "You carry ghosts," he observes. "They pace the planks behind you." "They pace everywhere," Arya replies. He tilts his head. "I knew a Bravo once who said the dead walk Bravos by day as plainly as the living. Was that true?" "They walk," she agrees, thinking of corridors lined with silent faces. He nods. "On this ship we have our own dead. They prefer rum." He offers her a cup. She drinks, coughing as the burn sears. The captain laughs softly. "The living must drink faster," he says. The rum warms her chest. She feels her ghosts settle for a moment at her heels like obedient dogs. She thanks him and departs. Below, she dreams of halls of faces dripping seawater and of wolves howling through deserted Bravosi streets. When she wakes, their echoes still sing. At last, the coast of Westeros rises on the horizon. Gray cliffs, green headlands shrouded in summer fog. Gull cries thread the air. Salt tang gives way to the earthier musk of pine forests. Arya leans over the rail and inhales. The scent of home is half-remembered snow, but summer's breath carries hints of blackberries and wildfire ash. Somewhere inland, war smolders still. She parts from the crew with thanks and steps onto a weathered pier outside Maidenpool. Her boots touch land. Tremor passes up her legs. She is here. She is alive. She is alone. Carts creak along muddy tracks. Small folk shuffle with heads down. Rumor travels faster than horses, and rumors of dragons and queens and bastards returned already churn among them. Arya keeps her hood low, but everywhere she sees suspicion. Lannister gold cloaks searching for traitors, Frey banners hunting wolves. Danger crouches behind every hedge. Yet in the market square she glimpses something colder. A young girl, small, dark-eyed, face-smudged, handing out loaves to hungry children. Arya's heart freezes. The girl turns, and for an instant, Arya sees herself. Same gray eyes, same lift of chin. The waif. The girl's gaze passes over Arya without pause. She smiles gentle reassurance to a weeping boy, then moves on. That serene charity might fool any onlooker, but Arya knows those steps, the calculation behind the softness. She feels the echo of wrists bound, nails digging into her throat. Blood pounds in her ears. Fight pulls her forward, flight drags her back. The market seems to shrink. Crowd pressing in, stalls creaking. Color drains from faces until only the waif holds hue. Arya slips into an alley, flattening against damp stone. She forces breath, soundless. Her fingers brush the pouch at her belt. War cannot be rushed, she reminds herself. The first strike must be the final. For now she must watch, learn whom the waif has beguiled, what network she spins. The many-faced god is patient. Arya will be patient too. She waits until the sun sets and shadows lengthen like blades. Then she follows. The hunt has begun. Trailing her quarry through crooked lanes, Arya notes every habit the waif mimics. The bounce in step she stole from Arya's younger self, the way she lifts her gaze in feigned curiosity exactly as a curious wolf cub might. Watching feels like witnessing an unkind doppelganger wear her childhood as costume. At a ruined septee near the town wall, Arya climbs to the rafters and lies belly down across a beam, peering through broken tiles while the waif nests below. She hears refugees call her Lady Mercy. The name curdles Arya's stomach. Mercy was a mask she once tried on in Braavos, a kindness that disguised steel. Now, Mercy serves death. Night by night, Arya observes. She sees pale bodies carried from the sept each dawn. Old men, sick children, broken women. Victims offered gentle sleep, but robbed of breath by subtle poison. Their faces, Arya knows, are destined for Braavos vaults. The waif has made Westeros her harvest field. Arya's hate sharpens into purpose. She catalogues every guard rotation, every door bolt, every creak of stair. She steals stale bread and stale rumors, trading them for a pair of riding gloves and a half-inch file. She files at a rusty hinge until it breathes silence. One moonless hour, she slips beneath the sept. The charnel pit reeks. She gags but continues. There she finds the wooden crates lined with sawdust and mildew. Inside each rests a face flayed and tanned, some fresh, some curling. She recognizes none, yet all are familiar. They share the expression of surrender. She slips one face into her pouch beside the waif's, a gift for the many-faced god, to remind him she still serves, on her terms. At dawn, she presses chalk marks on the outer wall, symbols of plague. By midday, the town bailiff orders the sept quarantined. Panic scatters refugees. Mercy's sanctuary empties. The waif's harvest ends abruptly. Arya waits in the rafters when the waif returns at dusk. The assassin stands amid overturned cots, smelling of lye, her borrowed face twisted in fury. She knows she has been cut from her crop and does not yet see the hand that severed her. When she spins, Arya drops. She lands noiselessly behind a support column, breath held. The waif prowls like a cat, nostrils flaring. Is someone here? She calls, voice trembling not with fear but curiosity. Arya presses against stone until mortar grinds her skin. She listens to the waif's footsteps pad closer, the hush of a drawn blade. She counts heartbeats, 1, 2, 3, and slips silently to the next pillar. The game of hide and strike begins anew. They circle for hours beneath cracked frescoes depicting the seven. Candle stubs smoke, casting jittering halos. The waif sniffs, tilts ear. It is an old dance they know well. Finally, Arya whispers, Valar Morgulis. The waif's head snaps toward sound. She strikes, and meets emptiness. Her blade clacks stone. Arya slides behind her, hamstring knife poised. But the waif spins faster. Their daggers flash. Tang meeting clang and sparks. They lock, wrists trembling. You cannot kill what wears your face, the waif hisses. I can free it. Arya replies and pushes. Steel bites flesh, not her flesh. Blood spatters fresco walls already faded by war. The waif gasps as blade finds home beneath her ribs. Arya withdraws and stabs again, swift, sure, precise. Once learned, the waif had taught her. 3 shallow cuts bleed a man longer. 1 deep cut ends him. Arya chooses deep. The waif crumples. Her borrowed face slackens, mask unmoored by muscle loss. Arya kneels, catching the stolen visage as it slips. Beneath, the wife's true features gape in surprise, as if she cannot fathom a world where Arya Stark still breathes. You wore me poorly, Arya says softly. She closes the wife's eyes. From her pouch she removes the tanned fragment of the wife's original face. She presses it over dead skin, full circle. She sews it fast with thread pulled from her own cloak. Then she lays the corpse in the crate, meant for other victims, writes a prayer to the many-faced god upon the lid, and leaves it unsealed for rats, or priests, whichever arrives first. When she steps into dawn's gray wash, Maidenpool's bells toll mourning for plague victims who never existed. Arya walks among villagers with hood drawn. No one sees her. The world breathes easier, ignorant that a predator fell in the night. Arya turns west toward the King's Road. She has debts still, a list that aches. But today she carries two faces in her pouch. One of the waif, one unknown. She thinks she might return the unknown to the House of Black and White one day. Payment for kindness is learned without consent. But first, winter fell. Sansa ... Jon Doto. Cersei. Ill in pain. The twins. She tightens her gloves and sets her stride along. Behind her, gulls wheel over Maidenpool and the sea sighs against stone. Ahead, the world awaits a girl who has died and lived, and will kill in turn until her ledger is balanced. She understands now. The many-faced god does not choose his servants. They choose themselves, each time they decide who deserves to live behind their eyes. Arya Stark has made her choice, and the dawn welcomes her onward, crimson as freshly spilt blood. Mist clung to the King's Road like a damp cloak, softening the ruts and blunting the wind-sharpened stones, and Arya set her boots down one measured step after another, letting the rhythm of walking settle her bones after the long weeks at sea. Every so often she paused to taste the air. South of Maidenpool, the shore breezes smelled of rot and seaweed, but as the miles unspooled beneath her soles, the salty tang dwindled to the musk of wet leaves, horse droppings, wood smoke, and something fainter. Frost in hiding, the first ghost of oncoming autumn. It stirred half-remembered mornings at Winterfell when Bran complained of cold floors, and Jon laughed, telling him to be grateful he had feet to feel them with. Those memories were warm embers. Arya cupped them in her mind's palms and breathed until they glowed without scorching her focus. She traveled light. A water skin, a twist of hard bread, a fold of dried venison, the waif's cured face, and the unknown face stitched flat inside her belt pouch. A bone needle, a coil of black thread, one throwing knife in her right boot, and the Bravosi blade she'd honed from a fish-gutting knife in her left sleeve. She wore homespun grays turned dusty brown and a frayed felt cap that shadowed her eyes. From a distance she might pass for a teamster's boy or an overgrown stable lad, and the closer a stranger looked, the less they understood of what stared back. In the House of Black and White, she had learned that true invisibility came not from hiding, but from being seen incorrectly. 3 days north of Maidenpool, she overtook a line of broken-down wagons. Donkeys brayed in protest while men in patched surcoats strained at clogged wheels. The banners draped over the lead tilt cart bore a 7-pointed star half-faded, and the guards wore no sigil save chipped prayer tokens strung on rawhide. Septons, she guessed, though the war had burned so many septs that begging brothers now roamed with relics and bodies alike. One limped toward her, beard crusted with dust. "Child," he called hoarsely, "have you any water to spare?" Arya loosened the stopper on her skin and tilted enough for 2 swallows into his wooden cup. He drank greedily, wiped his mouth, then squinted at her. "The stranger walks beside you." "Beside everyone," she said, picturing the faceless god's vault of masks. The beggar septon nodded as though she had recited Holy Writ. "We drag bones of sisters slain at salt pans," he explained, "to rest them at Blessed Isle. If the Freys let us pass Talon, pray for us." "Then thou I will." She stepped away before he could press a ragged blessing to her brow. That night, she camped under a leaning oak and listened to their procession creak by in the dark, wheels moaning like specters. When wolves howled in the distance, the donkeys answered with frantic brays. Arya smiled into the crook of her elbow. Real wolves left her alone. She wondered if Nymeria still prowled the Green Forks, grown massive and gray with years. Someday they would find each other again. Until then, she traveled with shadows. The following dawn a drizzle set in, fine as spun glass, pricking her cheeks. By mid-morning, the King's Road dipped into a shallow valley where black cottages squatted like dead beetles. Roofs collapsed. Crows flapped off ridge poles as she passed. In one ruin, she saw skeletons propped at a table. 3 small and 1 large, their bones green with moss. She kept walking, but the image followed. At a place where 2 charred signposts met, Arya turned west into the riverlands. The track here was churned to sucking mud by ox teams hauling timber toward siege lines that no longer existed. Trees arched overhead, their leaves broad and heavy, dripping music. Somewhere nearby water dashed over rocks, and the smell of it urged her on until she emerged onto a stone bridge spanning a swift brook. There she paused. On the far bank stood a man in tattered maester's blacks with only one arm. Beside him, a woman whose left eye was milk-white and scarred. They stared at her knee-high in the stream's spray as though debating whether she were flesh or mirage. Arya felt knives prickle her palms inside her sleeves, yet she showed a bland face. "Is the crossing safe?" she asked. The maester answered with the clipped accent of Old Town. "Safe for those who mind their own business." "What business do I look like I mind?" The blind-eyed woman laughed, harsh as rust scraping. "None at all. Go on, boy." She walked past them slowly, boots slipping on slick stones. When she glanced back from the bank, they had vanished. Perhaps they were ghosts, or perhaps the Brotherhood without banners still haunted these roads, culling Frey patrols under Thoros' red eyes, or Lady Stoneheart's silent fury. Arya hoped for the latter. Someday she would meet Catelyn Stark's corpse queen and kneel or not, depending which way justice blew. By the fifth night, her food was gone, but she banked a small cook fire in a stand of willow and snared 3 rabbits from paths of trampled nettle. She skinned one for stew, salted the second to smoke at dawn, and wrapped the third unskinned in leaves. Then, taking the black thread from her pouch, she basted the waif's face along its seam again. The leather puckered around the edges. Heat and damp made it warp. She trimmed ragged bits, humming almost soundlessly. It felt obscene to groom the relic of her enemy like a doll, yet the ritual steadied her thoughts. Death sewn shut, debt accounted. When the hair grease hissed into the blaze, she wondered if the many-faced god could smell offerings carried on wood smoke. 2 days later, she reached an inn whose signboard, the Standing Stag, hung broken, antlers splintered. Only half the roof remained, but someone had pitched canvas over the gap, and the common room inside pulsed with lute and pipe and the hum of laughter. Mummers she saw at once. Bright scarves, jingling bells, chalk-white faces. The troop's leader, a rotund Bravosi with turquoise eyeshadow, sprawled near the empty hearth recounting bawdy tales, while villagers guffawed. A row of arrows bristled from quivers stacked by the door. Nearer the ale casks, a solemn girl in Taroshi green plucked harp strings, softer than moth wings. Arya ordered small ale with a copper sheet culled from a dead cut purse on the road, then sat in a dim corner to watch. Pretending a drunken doze, she catalogued the players. 3 swords beside the arrows, 2 cudgels, a knife balanced under the fat man's folding fan. They traveled armed, then smart in these lands. When the fat man's jokes lapsed, he exclaimed, "We seek a new juggler. Our last quit us for love of a butcher's daughter, and our balls are heavy unmet." The crowd roared. "Come now, who among you has nimble hands?" A hush fell. No one rose. Arya sipped ale, tasting sour apples and iron, and found herself lifting 2 walnuts from a bowl. She flicked one, the other, weaving circles until both spun between her knuckles. Habit more than pride put her on her feet. She stepped toward the clearing. The mummers stared. The fat Bravosi tilted his head. "Little master," he prodded in his sing-song accent. Arya tossed both nuts, added her pewter cup. Then a candle stub. 4 objects sailed arcs. The trick came back like sword practice. When she caught them neatly, the room applauded. She bowed. "You'll serve," declared the fat man. 3 copper a day and bread besides if you can keep up." "I'll try," said Arya, voice gritty from road dust. They asked her name. She told them, Rill, a hedge boy from Duskendale. The Bravosi introduced himself as Gilda the Magnificent, magnificent in verse, magnificent in girth, and named his companions. Sorella of Tyrosh harpist, Pat the twins' words, thin long-nosed, Butterbum, a jester with painted tears, and half a dozen more. They planned a circuit to Harrenhal, where Sir Lothar Frey was said to host games for morale among siegemen. Arya's pulse leapt. Lothar Frey, author of The Doors at the Red Wedding. Her path bent northward already. Aligning with a merry band would hide her better than trudging alone. That night, they pressed blankets in the loft above the shattered roof. Rain whispered over canvas. While Butterbum snored piggishly, Arya lay awake, counting knots in the rafters, adjusting her breathing to slow, shallow draws, so none could mark her as female. When dawn tinged the east, she rose, shouldered bundles, and followed the troops' wagon north along narrow tracks. Travel with mummers was noisy. Bells jangled when they hit potholes, and Gildo sang bawdy rounds about fat merchants and skinny whores. Villagers waved or scowled. At each hamlet the players performed for coin or soup, and Arya juggled colored balls stitched from pig bladder, careful never to drop one. Between acts, she listened more than she spoke. Mummers gathered news like fleas gather blood. From them she learned that Walder Frey had dispatched sons to rouse river lords still fighting under Tully banners, that Lady Stoneheart's outlaws hanged any Frey they caught, and that King's Landing now bled gold to higher sellswards after rumors of dragons across the sea. Every fragment threaded into her map of vengeance. After a fortnight pate, the Twinswords recognized Maidenpool refugees describing Mercy the kind lady who soothed the sick. Arya feigned indifference while her gut clenched. Pate shrugged. Sounds a sweet lass, though folk vanished after drinking her draughts. Gildo plucked lute strings. Sweet killers make best legends. Butterbum capered a mock death, tongue lolling. Arya made her hand still. One evening, as they camped by the banks of the Trident's green fork, Sorella summoned Arya to fetch more willow bark for tea. They walked beyond torch glow, and the Taroshi woman murmured, "You hide your shape poorly under that jerkin." Arya kept her face blank. Sorella bent to pluck leaves, her long green sleeves whispering. "I was born Sorella within Tyrosh's pillow houses," she confided. "Men there pay to believe illusions." She straightened, fixing Arya with lantern-struck eyes. "Gildo won't prive urine coin, but Pate will sell your secret for a kiss. Let him try." Arya's voice scraped low. Sorella smiled. "Take care. The riverlands swallow secrets slower than the sea." Een. By midsummer, Harrenhal loomed like a jagged curse against a gleaming sky. Dragon fire centuries old had melted stone into tar-black drips, but new banners flapped from broken towers. Silver twins on blue House Frey. Gildo's wagon rattled through the outer court, while sentries inspected crates of props. Arya kept her cap pulled low, a veneer of road grime on her cheeks. Within the wall smelled of smoke, boiled beef, and fear. Men in Frey colors slouched along battlements, eyes wary. Arya felt them note each stranger. She noted them back and tallied weapons. Too many crossbows, too few hearts behind them. The evening's feast took place in the King's Hall, a roofless cavern where summer stars glittered overhead. Long trestles groaned beneath trenchers of mutton. Gildo's troupe performed bawdy verses about the Blackwater rush, while sergeants laughed wine through their noses. Arya juggled firebrands blazing orange against night, sparks showering drums. When the last brand hissed in sand, applause thundered, and Sir Lothar Frey clapped perfunctorily from a high-backed chair. His face looked doughy and damp. Black rings puddled beneath small eyes. Gout plagued him, rumor said, and the night's heat soured his temper. After final bows, the mummers retired to a curtained alcove, where barrels of thin beer awaited. Butterbum tossed his motley cap aside. Pate stretched knotted shoulders. Gildo dabbed sweat from his painted brow. "Sir Lothar requests a private jest," he announced. Voice pitched for the group. "He offers 2 stags for a dwarf jest and a juggler to catch apples about his head." Pate snorted. "Let Butterbum dance dwarfish. The boy can juggle." Arya's stomach tightened. Alone before Lothar would mean closer scrutiny. Yet to refuse risked suspicion. She shrugged. "I'll catch whatever he throws." They passed through tattered brocade into a smaller courtyard garden where moonlight silvered scorched grass. Sir Lothar waited in a wicker chair cushioned with furs. 2 guards flanked him, rangy men in hauberks. His swollen ankle rested on a stool. Butterbum capered first, feigning a limping dwarf chasing a goose. Lothar's thin smile cracked wider when the jester tripped and landed in a puddle. Then he beckoned Arya forward and tossed a ripe apple. She caught it, tossed it back, caught 2, then 3. He grew delighted, barking for more. A guard fetched half a dozen. Arya circled them, weaving patterns swift enough the fruit blurred. Sweat broke across her shoulders. She forced calm. "Closer," Lothar ordered. She obeyed until she stood 2 paces away. Juice sprayed with each spin. The apples bruised, became slippery. She risked one glance up. His eyes glittered hog-like. "Enough," he sighed, and reached. She caught the fruit, bowed, wiped sticky palms on her jerkin. Lothar studied her. "Small for a juggler? You from Gulltown?" His tone suggested all gulls were thieves. "Duskendale." She kept voice flat. "Far road. Might you juggle knives?" He flicked fingers. A guard unsheathed a short sword, edge nicked from misuse. "I might," Arya said, but lifted palms. "Not tonight. A juggler rests wrists or skins split." Lothar's smile waned. Pity. I'd have wagered on your hands." He leaned back, knuckles whitening on chair arms. "Off with you." The guard reclaimed the sword. Butterbum bowed low, half again, then pranced away. Arya matched his pace. Only when curtains closed behind did she exhale. She felt Lothar's eyes linger, hungry in ways she understood too well. Later, near the wagons, Sorella handed Arya a cloth to wipe sap-sweet pulp from her hair. "You should wear girl's garb," the Taroshi murmured. "Knife-throwing girls earn 3 times. Might earn knives in my back too." Sorella shrugged. Her own doublet laced tight enough to flaunt curves. "Knives find us anyway." That night, Arya slept lightly, a stick tucked under straw for quick reach. In the hush before dawn, a mouse skittered, and every muscle sprang awake. She calmed herself with recitation of names. Lothar Frey joined the list she would carve one day. Rage was a whetstone. Patient strokes made it sharp. Harrenhal festivities carried on 3 days. On the 4th, horns blared at sunrise. Riders clattered out the gate. Frey scouts to chase a band of outlaws raiding supply carts to the north. Arya watched them depart from atop Gilda's wagon and wondered if they rode to their own graves. Rumor placed Lady Stoneheart's gallows company near Maidenpool. Perhaps they had drifted west. All roads in the Riverlands led sooner or later to vengeance. That afternoon the mummers prepared to leave. Gildo counted dwindling coin and declared they would head toward the twins for Walder Frey's harvest feast. The words chilled Arya. Walder gathered kin and vassals to celebrate some new alliance. There would be meat and songs and blood ripe for spilling. Arya pictured the old man's scabbed hands, imagined sliding needle through the slack flesh of his throat. She saw Rob's crown tumble from a damp floor all over again, and her pulse answered yes. Yet haste blunted justice. Walder crowded his keep with greater guard than any city. To stab him, she would need a mask none expected. She thought of the unknown face folded in her pouch. Smooth, small, and sexless, taken from the wife's crate. No one in Westeros had seen it. Perfect. If only she could tan and fit it properly. She lacked ash oil and stretching frame. But Gildo's casks carried stage paints, bottle spirits for quick dry fire. A cunning girl might brew makeshift fixatives. The many-faced god helped those who helped themselves. As wagons rumbled off through Melted Stone Gate, Arya slipped behind into Harrenhal's shadows. She climbed scorched stairways until she reached a soot-rimmed window opening over the godswood. There she unrolled the unknown face beneath sun, examining. The skin remained supple. She moistened it with a dab of water, then pressed it against her own cheek, feeling lines align. Too pale. Frays were blotched with windburn, not this dove-white hue. She needed dyes, shading. Stage paint could darken hollows, raise cheekbones. She would test tonight, while others slept. A hand fell on her shoulder. She spun, knife out. Pat T stared wide-eyed down the blade. 7. "Save me," he gasped. Hands lifted. Arya's heart thudded. She lowered steel half an inch. "You follow quiet. I saw you slip away." His gaze flicked to the mask. "What game's this?" "Stage trick. Needed light." Pat's thin brow furrowed. "That's no sewn leather prop." Arya considered. A throat cut would silence him, but Gildo would notice. Yet dead fools could be passed off to Frey patrols. She might plant blame. Blood surged hot. Her fingers gripped hilt. Pate wet his lips. "I don't care," he whispered. "We all keep secrets." He tugged his side collar to reveal faded blue tattoo circles on his neck. "Slave mark of court. Runaway never tells on runaway, yes?" She eased knife down. "Yes." Her voice was smoke. Pate exhaled hard, then forced a grin. "When we reach the twins, I wager you juggle all Lord Walder's goblets at once." He backed away carefully, sandals scuffing ash. At the stair door he paused. "Mind the watchers. Sir Lothar keeps eyes in fallen stones." Then he was gone. Arya blew out a breath. Trust no one, Sirio had preached. Yet sometimes knives sheathed spared noise worse than risk. She folded the face, secured it. Pat's warning gnawed. Lothar had spies. She must leave before they pricked beyond her guise. That dusk she rejoined the troop on the King's Yard slope. Storm clouds massed purple, and winds whipped Gildo's silk sleeves. "The roads flood if we tarry," he declared. Wagons groaned forward. 2 leagues past Harrenhal the sky opened, drenching canvas tilts. Wheel tracks turned to slurry. They camped beneath cracked causeway stones once risen for Maegor's wars. Rain hammered all night, drumming like marching hosts. In pallid dawn, Butterbum discovered his purse cut. Coin gone. Suspicion jabbed every face. Gildo bemoaned thieves. Pate kept silent, but Arya saw his shoulders hunch. They pressed west along the green fork. Forests weeping overhead. At a cross-stream clogged by fallen ash trees, they found bodies dangling from an oak limb. 4 Frey bowmen, tongues black, bellies opened, a square of parchment nailed, noose drawn round a twin tower sigil. Lady Stoneheart's mark dot. The mummers gaped in horror. Arya studied the work. Clean, precise cuts. Brotherhood dot. She felt a fierce satisfaction but hid it. Past that grisly mile the troops' courage frayed. Villagers shunned them, fearing Stoneheart's ire. Gildo tallied coins, face pinched. He announced a change, south to Seagard, where House Mallister paid true silver for jesters. Arya masked relief. The twins would wait. First she required time and tools. Seagard meant coastal roads, meaning less Frey patrols. 3 days' march brought them among bracken fields. Storms broke and broke again, but salt breezes off the Sunday sea heartened them. They entered Seagard at sundown, when the tall west tower cast its bell shadow over slate roofs. Mallister guards inspected wagon crates politely, took small bribes. Gildo arranged a performance for Lord Jason inside the hall 2 nights hence. The mummers lodged in Dockside Inn. The Gull and Oar, clean linens, shuttered windows. Arya shared loft space with Butterbum and a mute tumbler boy. When the house quieted, she slipped down to the kitchens, scavenged alum, oil, wood ash from bread ovens. She carried them to an abandoned shed by nets. There, she labored beneath flickering lantern, blending ash oil, alum water, beetroot stain, ground walnut hulls for shading. She warmed the unknown face over steam, brushed on fixative, stretched it between 2 driftwood forks to cure. The work consumed hours. Dawn's seabirds keened before she finished. She draped the mask to dry and collapsed in straw, until gull cries roused her again. When she tested the fit at dusk, the face clung like damp silk. Cheeks broad, jaw fine, ambiguous age. She darkened beneath eyes, painted faint freckles, and stepped before a cracked mirror. An entirely different youth looked back. Neither boy nor girl, pale gray eyes wide with false innocence. Perfect. She named the mask Willow, after slender river trees near Winterfell. Willow could slip among the Frey hostellers as a stable waif or scullion, unseen. Yet to kill Walder Frey she needed entry. Gildo's troop bound for Seagard alone would not cross the twins. She required another caravan. She considered deserting tonight, but suspicion lingered around Butterbum's missing purse. Better depart clean. During supper, she juggled pewter forks with Butterbum's painted apple and earned roaring laughter. Lord Mallister's steward clapped approval. Gildo's coffers swelled. That night, while Pate strummed absent chords, he spoke low. "Gullo's purse not lost. I saw Butterbum slip coin in his own sack. Tell him. He would flay me. Better a secret for secret." Pate glanced at Arya, his meaning plain. He knew her maskcraft. She knew the jester's theft. Trust is knives. Arya inclined head. Safe, if safe. Butterbum's laughter echoed below. Next day, after performing at a fishmonger fair under clear skies, Arya caught wind of a merchant train leaving at dawn for Fairmarket. Then onto the twins bearing casks of arbor wine purchased from a captured galley. Brace paid high for indulgence. Drivers needed an extra guard who could climb and unlatch barrels. She offered, displaying knife scars on her palms as proof of deckhand labor. The merchant, Bellis, a heavy-set Kuhorik, hired her for 2 silvers and meals. She told Gildo she must part ways. He tutted, sad for lost juggler, but wished her big houses and bright stages. Sorella hugged her, slipped a green ribbon into her hand. "If ever Tyrosh calls, say you're my sister." Butterbum snorted that she'd be juggling in a fray cookpot. Arya merely smiled. Before dawn's glow, she hefted her satchel aboard a wine cart. 12 oxen, 5 wagons, 8 guards, 2 merchants. She rode rear cart, where barrels sloshed sweet fumes. As Seaguard dwindled, gulls wheeled farewell. Pate, the twins' words watched from a wharf post, face unreadable. Arya raised a hand. He lifted 2 fingers, then vanished in crowd. The carts rolled east, clattering over river spans. Summer baked ruts into hard ridges. Willow. Her new face, drank rainwater and listened. Guards boasted of fray feasts, of dwarf strippers rumored hired from King's Landing, of pies stuffed with pigeons. Walder sought to remind lords he yet ruled the forks. Arya stored each tidbit. At campfires she polished the little dagger, rubbed edges with stone until the blade's kiss split hairs. She practiced slipping between shadows until even starlight seemed reluctant to cling. 3 days out of Fairmarket, the road split marshy. Mosquitoes gathered in droning clouds. So did riders. Gray outriders, heralding tolls. Bellis bribed them with wine. They waived passage. Yet one gray-plumed surgeon eyed Arya's cap. "You boy," he barked. "Your mark." "Willow," she replied in whisper husky voice. "Too pretty for wine, rat." His palm groped air. Arya handed him a cup. He drank, coughed at strength, then grinned drunken eyes. "Serve me again at the feast. I'll see you warm." She bowed low enough to hide revulsion. That dusk, as they unlocked cask hoops to sip measure for the many-faced god, a smuggler's tradition, Arya dripped 3 drops onto dirt for those who died at the Red Wedding. The earth hissed. She drank the next mouthful and almost gagged on memories of banners draped brown and red. Fairmarket swarmed with wagons ringed by makeshift palisades. Across muddy commons glinted the mirrored armor of Lord Earnford's levy, purple gauntlet on breastplates. Beyond stood Lord Charlton's men. Frey allies coiled inward like flies to dung. The market's inns overflowed. Sobelis hired a cowshed. Straw stank of old manure. Yet Arya slept deeply, hand around dagger, the waif's face beneath her head like morbid pillow. At dawn the host assembled. Over 200 carts rattled north along the causeway, a raised track threading reeds and sinkholes. Willow walked behind Bella's cart, hood shading stolen features. As sun climbed, twin stone towers rose above horizon, massive, ugly, watchful. The eastern tower's watch bell tolled. Clang, clang, clang. Arya's pulse echoed. Freys at the gate jotted names, searched wagons. Arbor wine earned them quick nods. Bellis paid toll. They rolled across the bridge whose beams still bore faint rust-brown flecks, unsanded since the Red Wedding's slaughter. Midspan. Arya paused beneath oak timbers and laid her palm on rail. "Rob," she breathed. But the wind stole the word. Inside, outer yards teemed with bustle. Scullions lugged flour, huntsmen gutted swine, Blue and silver banners overlapped orange broom and purple gauntlet. Arya counted guard routes. She glimpsed the gray-plumed sergeant from the tall house swaggering past with 2 cousins. She ducked her head. Bellis's carts were guided to stone cellars. Their willow and 3 other drudges hefted barrels onto trestles. Torchlight flickered over sweating backs. After hours of labor, the others dispersed. Arya lingered, claiming to tighten hoops. Alone, she surveyed exits. Stair to kitchens, spiral up to master hall, drainage culvert half rat-gnawed. Good. She retrieved a wooden dipper, tapped a cask, filled a flagon. Into it, she ground a black cake of sweet sleep from her pouch, stolen in Bravastai, enough to fell a boar. She corked the flagon and set it with other tasting samples near the stairs, marking wax seal with chalk X at supper's clangor. She donned Scullion's apron, hair bound high, Willow's face powdered to ruddy cheeks. She joined a line bearing flagons upward. The great hall stank of roasted boar and onion, but mostly of age. Walder Frey hunched upon a dais in robe of threadbare ermine. His watery eyes darted over platters like a rat guarding crumbs. Sons and grandsons sprawled at 3 long tables, bragging, quarreling over seat order. Lothar Frey, gout swollen, sat left of the lord. His glance slid along servants, paused nowhere. Arya's heart thumped. She kept head bowed. Wine servers poured red vintages first, sharp Dornish, then fruity reach stock. When grooms fetched casks of arbor white, the steward barked for tastings. Arya stepped forward with her flagon. A footman drew a goblet, sniffed, sipped, nodded. The steward signaled, "Take to Lord Walder." She advanced, tray trembling only slightly. 290 Walder squinted. "Arbor," his voice reedy. "Yes, my lord," she murmured. He took the cup, swirled, sniffed. "You're new. Whose spawn?" "Willow moored stables." "Keep answers short, unmemorable." "Pretty enough. After feast, come chew my meat if your teeth are strong." Laughter rippled among kin. Arya lowered gaze. Behind lashes he tracked each wrinkle on his jaw. He sipped once, twice. Bah, too sweet. He shoved goblet aside, waved her off. "Bring me strong wine." The steward seized her tray. She backed into servant press, pulse racing. 2 sips, perhaps half a swallow. Sweet sleep worked slow, but sure. She would need him alone before effect waned. Feast wore on. Singers, jugglers, Galagray dancers. Willow's face glimpsed none, busy refilling cups. Walder drank other wines, nibbling pies. Lothar's gout foot throbbed. He cursed musicians' noise. Hours passed. Then Walder's lids drooped. He pawed at throat. Lothar leaned, muttered. Walder snarled, attempted to stand. Legs wobbled. Kin rushed to aid. "Just tired," he rasped. They carried him on padded chair through side arch toward a solar. Guard corridor, narrow, torchlit. Arya fetched a jug as pretext and followed at distance. Lothar limped behind chair, cursing useless porters. At solar door he sent them off. "Leave us. I'll see the old go to bed." 2 guards remained. Arya slipped into an alcove, pressed to harass. Inside she heard Walder wheeze, mattress creak, Lothar's sigh. Guard to solar door shifted. The other paced. Arya's mind raced. 2 guards, 1 her, but hall tapestries hung thick. She drew throwing knife, measured angle. When pacing guard turned toward entry, she flicked blade. Steel thudded into Arras 2 feet left of his ear, not fatal but sudden. He jerked, shouted, lunged, and tore tapestry down upon himself, entangled. Arya darted from cover, slammed hilt into the second's temple before he drew sword. He crumpled. Inside the solar, Lothar's head snapped up. Arya burst through with servant's jug. He opened mouth. Her boot hit his gouty ankle. Pain stole his cry. She sprang, driving dagger into his thigh to pin him to chair. He shrieked. Walder blinked, drug-hazed confusion clouding eyes. Arya whipped around chair, seized Walder's chin with left hand, pulled head back. "Red wedding," she hissed. Recognition flared in his drooping gaze. Then her dagger slid beneath jaw, quick across throat. Blood pulsed, warm fountain. She stepped clear so flow would not soak her. Walder gurgled, sagged. Lothar clawed at pinned leg. Arya ripped needle from belt. She had shaped its narrow double-edged point from the Brevosi blade weeks past. She sank it between Lothar's ribs where heart hammered. He spasmed once, collapsed. Silence. She wiped blades on Lothar's cloak. Walder twitched faintly. She watched until still. The sweet sleep spared him pain, but her steel spared none. Faces hung in her pouch, begged offering. Yet she had no time to flay hides. Alarm might rise when guards failed shift. She dragged the entangled guard into solar, slit throats of both unconscious men. Blood pooled black on rushes. From dresser she took a wineskin, sprinkled claret in 4 directions, then carved a new symbol on wall with needle tip. Let Stoneheart take the blame. She slipped from solar, wiping shoes on tapestry. Servant knots bustled near kitchens unaware. She dropped wine jug, let it shatter. Noise drew attention elsewhere. Through winding corridors to cellars, she retrieved bundle. Her clothes, the waif's face, coin. She donned traveler cloak, discarded apron. At drainage culvert, she pried grate with boot heel and crawled through slime into night-wet grass beyond walls. Moon silvered the twins above quiet river. Horses in paddock stamped. Arya kept low, reached hedge break. There she paused. In pouch lay willow mask. She peeled it, folded, tucked away. Frey feasts would echo tomorrow with horror. By dawn she'd be leagues north on a stolen gelding. She mounted, urged horse across shallow ford. Not the bridge but reeds where little boats tied. Water splashed fetlocks. Behind, one tower bell jarred alive. She grinned. Too late. King's Road awaited beyond green banks. Northward lay Winterfell rebuilt under banners of a direwolf and a white dragon. Rumor said she would see. But first one more name. Ilyn Payne still roved with Lannister remains. King's Landing would fall to dragons or wolves, yet his head belonged to her list. Beyond him, Cersei if time allowed. She pressed heels. Horse lunged, hooves drumming mud. Dawn reddened eastern clouds, painting rivers ripples crimson like Walder's blood. Arya Stark rode on, faces in pouch, thumping gentle as heartbeat. She spoke to them softly, debt paid, list shorter. Wind carried her whisper north, across ruins and fields, toward memories waiting to be reclaimed. And behind her, in dying echoes of tower bells, the many-faced god counted coins, newly placed upon tongues, balances settling for a time until new injustices tipped scales again. The road stretched endless, but she no longer traveled alone. Ghosts matched her stride, wolves circled distant woods, and every crooked mile whispered her many names. Girl of Winter, servant of death, juggler of destinies, until names themselves felt like blades nuanced for different killings. She would wield whichever fit. For now, she chose the oldest, worn smooth by love and grief alike. I am Arya of Winterfell, she told the coming dawn, and I am going home. A.E.K. The wagon ruts of the Green Fork dwindled behind Arya like scars in drying mud. She had traded the stolen gelding at a moss-roofed crofter's village for a raw-boned mare with legs like willow switches. Swifter if less certain-footed, and now the horse's breath steamed in the cool air of the riverland's northern fringes. Summer still clung to the hedgerows, but each dawn now tasted faintly of iron and frost, a promise of the season's turn. Arya rode wrapped in a patched cloak the color of crow feathers, the wife's face in Willow's folded skin sewn into the lining between layers of coarse wool. Their weight lay against her heart, warming and warning her in equal measure. 3 days north of the twins she left the King's Road for a hunter's track that wormed through alder stands and fields gone feral. The detour would take her past towns once sworn to House Stark, but long battered by war. There, she told herself, it would be safer to melt among small folk than risk Frey toll cages. In truth, she hungered to see the North's first outliers. A stone granary here, a squat watchtower there, any relic reminding her she was almost home. At dusk a barn owl swooped across her path, wings whispering. She watched it settle on a branch, head cocked, moonlit eyes twin coins of curiosity. "First I've seen since Winterfell," she murmured, unsure whether she addressed the bird or the ghosts trailing her. The owl blinked once and launched silently into dark again, bearing her words into the treetops where whisper leaves caught and carried them farther than wind alone. She made camp in the skeleton of an abandoned smithy, roof ribs clattering when night gusts worried loose timbers. No fire. Emboldened Frey patrols roamed even this far north, hungry for ransom. Instead, she gnawed smoked venison by starlight and traced her map of names in the dust: Cersei, Ilan Payne, Polliver, Roerge, and the Hound. Though Sandor Clegane's scratch had grown faint, almost rubbed away by fate. When her lids sagged, she slept with hand on dagger and dreamt of the many-faced god holding a scale. Walder Frey's face balanced against her own, tilting neither side, but the wife's mask swung on a separate arm, heavier than both. She woke before dawn to hoofbeats clopping slow and measured. Gray light edged the doorway. Arya rolled to her belly and peered through a gap where plank met earth. 5 horses ambled along the cart track, 2 shaggy northern Garans, 3 rangy steppe breeds. Their riders wore half-cloaks trimmed in brown fox and carried longbows unstrung across shoulders. The lead rider's helm sprouted antlers wrought from hammered bronze. House Talhart, Arya realized. Hornwood's neighbor Bannerman Tana. But Talhart men had marched south with Robb and died at the Red Wedding. She eased back, knuckles tightening around the hilt. The riders tethered horses to an apple tree outside and spoke in hushed tones. Their accents were northern, but softened by months among southern fields. Grief dulled their words. One produced a map, another a flask. Arya caught fragments. Barrowton, Karstark garrison, Deepwood plundered. They planned to skirt the bogs of the Neck and link with what remained of Lord Wyman Manderley's hosts rallying at White Harbor. Hope spiked behind her ribs. True Northmen still fought. She considered revealing herself, begging escort. But caution bit harder. The Freys had donned stolen northern cloaks before. A lone dagger could not wrest her from a circle of arrowmen if the banners lied. She waited, still as morning mist, while the party shared dried apples and piss-warm ale, then mounted again. Their hoofbeats dwindled in the hush that always follows narrow escapes. Before leaving the smithy, she pried a bent horseshoe from the forge wall and tucked it into her pack. A keepsake of restraint. 2 days on, the wooded highlands yielded to open heath. Purple heather rippled under low clouds, and wind smelt of peat fires leagues distant. Twice she spotted rough watchfires on ridges. Outlaw camps or broken levees regrouping, she could not tell. She chose a middle route through bracken gullies, letting the horse pick careful footing. At eventide, she overtook a line of wagons slogging north, oxen blowing fog. The merchants hailed from White Harbor, hauling cider and iron nails southward, but limping home, now empty after rumors of new tolls. Their guard captain, a swarthy woman with scarred cheek, eyed Arya's slight frame and asked if she could loose arrow or sling a stone. Arya answered by splitting a walnut mid-air with her throwing knife. They offered her broth in trade for a night's watch. So she walked sentry while the teamsters dozed, boots crunching frost-tipped grass. The night sky wheeled silver above, a pattern of familiarity older than her anger. Her mother had named constellations once: the Shadow Cat, the King's Crown, the Sword of the Morning. Arya paused beside a wagon and tried to trace the same shapes, but clouds skulked across the stars and smothered them. When dawn colored the east, the merchants pressed on toward North Road Split. Arya thanked them, declined coin, friendship traded fair, and turned off onto a deer trace threading the neck's southern verge. By midday the brush thickened, undergrowth hissing with unseen water. The mare balked at sucking bog holes, and Arya led her reins, boots sinking ankle-deep. Reed beds rose head-high. Gnats dizzied the air. Almost, she yearned for stone causeways of the Freys, yet the memory of a gaping throat kept her steps steady. The neck, old Nan used to say, belonged to crannogmen who could melt into moss and reappear behind you with frog spears. Arya watched the reeds. Once she glimpsed a shag-haired child waist-deep in water, skin painted green and brown. eyes bright as emeralds. They stared at each other across a mirror-slick pond, till the child vanished beneath lily pads without ripples. That night she found higher ground, a mossy hummock crowned by gnarled oak, and tethered the mare short. Mid-sleep, wolves howled, one mournful note swelling into chorus that shivered the dark. Something inside her breast howled back. Arya's fingers twitched toward the face pouch, then relaxed. She slept again, and dreamt of running on 4 sleek legs through moonlit fen, pelting across tufts and pools, jaw wet with the tang of rabbit blood. Nymeria, she thought, and woke with tears she quickly licked away before they iced. 3 dawns later, she trotted out of bog and onto firmer clay. In the hazy distance towered the hilltop ruins of Moat Cailin, ancient fortress teeth gnawed by green vines. Southron armies had battered themselves bloody here, but today banners of white wolf's head snapped from improvised ramparts, Stark colors reclaimed. Arya's chest squeezed. She dismounted behind a boulder and studied the gatehouse. Guards in hodgepodge leathers watched roads with wary discipline. The Bolton flayed man standards were gone, burned early in Jon Snow's retaking months past. If tales reached her true, she dared hope Jon still commanded. She donned Willow's face, the ambiguous, unfamiliar visage that invited little scrutiny. Then she guided her mare toward the fort. A tall guard with auburn beard called challenge. "Goods," he barked. "Message for Lord Stark," Arya answered in the soft Dornish drawl she'd practiced aboard ship, letting her voice tilt genderless. The guard eyed her slight build, but the mare looked healthy, saddlebags lean, no smuggler's weight. He gestured her inside and pointed toward a low stable, where a master of horse would secure animals. Within the crumbling hall of the drunkard's tower, a makeshift war room had sprouted. Maps pinned over soot-stained walls, messages stacked on trestle tables, quills jabbed into beakers of thinned ink. Men and women both wore direwolf brooches, though none as ornate as Winterfell's captains once sported. The air smelled of boiled leather and damp parchment. A scribe with ink-smudged lips glanced up. "What tidings?" Arya pitched voice lower. "A band of northern archers, 6 leagues south, bearing tall-hard antlers. Seek counsel, maybe join host." The scribe scribbled swift, then thrust parchment toward a runner. "Captain Mormont will want this." She nodded dismissal. Arya stepped back, heart pounding. With one lie she'd entered Stark-held territory and planted seeds that might gather lost bannermen. She felt half guilty. Though the Tallheart Riders existed, their intent to join might not, but the thought of swelling the northern host soothed the sting. She loitered near a hearth where blue flames danced low. 2 soldiers conversed in undertones. "Ravens yesterday. Wyman Manderley moves north along the coast, escorting Queen Daenerys' envoys. Dragons at White Harbor, can you believe? Only if they burn the Boltons out of Barrowhall," the other grunted. "Dragons in the north?" Arya's mind skittered. She imagined scaly wings blotting northern skies, and Jon's face stern beneath fiery light. She needed Winterfell before new wars swallowed chances for reunion. Near sundown, she sought permission to ride onward. The gate captain shrugged. "Roads clear to Torrhen Square, but keep north of the Wolfswood. The bastards from Deepwood raid travelers." Bastards, she thought, but said thanks. Out beyond Moat Cailin's shattered causeway, she removed Willow's face and breathed the marsh sweet air as herself. She whispered, "Soon," to no one, and pressed the mare into an easy lope under paling skies. The Wolfswood rose black and bristling, pines shearing the wind in sighs that sounded like old gods murmuring. Needle-thin drizzle needled exposed skin. Tracks narrowed, twisting between gnarled roots. Evening light guttered, and Arya reined to walk, scanning shadow for movement. Wolves here prowled bold, but she felt no fear of them, only of men. Once a raven flapped overhead to perch crooked in a spruce. Its croak sounded eerily like Stark. When night fell full, she found shelter beneath a rocky overhang curtained by wintergreen. A tiny trickle of spring water dripped into a hollow. She cupped her hands, drank, tasted stone and leaf rot. Fire was perilous but cold worse, so she built one the Braavosi way, Small, using fox dung and pine needles that burned smokeless. Over it she cooked the last of her venison, then drew out the waif's face. Moonlight revealed puckers tightening with dryness. She oiled the leather, ever careful not to let it crack. A ruined face secured nothing. As she worked, remembrance stirred. The waif's weight upon her chest, the smothering grip, the joyless smile. Arya thought of the dead girl whose unknown mask lay folded beside it, and of Walder Frey's startled gasp. She whispered the prayer she had once learned under Bravas' black pillars. Valar Morgulis. Then she answered herself. Valar Dohaeris. All men must die, but all who live must serve. Someone, something, some vow. Her vow now was Winterfell. Just before sleep, wind carried distant hoofbeats. She doused fire, melted into ferns, and waited. A column of riders filed past atop the ridge. Shaggy dark shapes with axes strapped across backs, leather jerkins dyed patchwork brown. Hill clansmen from the mountains of the moon? No. Sigil glimpsed on a ragged flag. The white birch of House Riswell. Bolton loyalists once. Arya's jaw clenched. Their numbers were few, perhaps 20, but she let them pass rather than risk capture when Winterfell lay so near. Morning saw her tracking their hoofprints north inadvertently, for their path mirrored hers. She skirted deeper into forest, urging the mare through underbrush, until branches clawed her cheeks. Soon Riswell riders vanished behind the press of trees, but before noon shouts rang faint ahead, echoing. She tethered horse and crept on foot toward the noise. A dell opened below. Riswell men ringed by figures in mismatched mail, shields emblazoned with flayed man scratched over by direwolf paw in white paint. A bastardized emblem of vengeance. At their head towered a woman in patchwork leather, half her face obscured by a gray cowl, a new scar visible at throat's edge. Her eyes burned red as fresh rubbed scars, and in her gauntleted fist swung a crossbow of savage design. Arya recognized the tales at once. Lady Stoneheart, risen Catelyn Stark leading the Brotherhood's ruthless wing. The Risewall captain pled conscience. We ride to pledge fealty to Lord Stark at Winterfell. Stoneheart's lieutenant, a burly outlaw with rope knotting his belt, translated her rasping breaths. She says your oaths stink of old blood. Kneel and confess Frey's treachery or hang. The captain spat vows of innocence. Stoneheart lifted one scarred hand. Arrows hissed from tree line. Risewell men crumpled like wheat in hail. Those who crawled were dragged to birch trunks and hanged on makeshift gibbets. Arya's stomach twisted, yet some grim part of her found justice in the crack of rope. When silence fell, Stoneheart stalked the corpses, eyes vacant as moonlit ponds. Arya's throat tightened. There stood her mother, but not. Threads of memory tangled. Catelyn's gentle touch at Winterfell, her last sight of Robb alive. She longed to call out, yet terror rooted her. Would this revenant spare even kin? Story said she slew Freys, Lannisters, any who might have stood silent at the wedding. Arya had been absent, but guilt still clung. As the Brotherhood melted back into forest shadows, Arya whispered, "I'm sorry," to the twilit clearing and retreated to her horse. 2 dawns later, the stone towers of Winterfell rose from a sea of frost-silvered fields. Smoke curled from rebuilt chimneys. Banners of direwolf and red-tailed dragon snapped side by side atop the battlements. Gates thick with new ironwood stood open during daylight for farmers bringing turnips and smoked trout. Armor glinted on the walls, but colors mixed. Stark gray, Mormont black, Karstark white sunburst. Even a handful of burnished copper triangles of House Mormere. Dragon banners, black 3-headed symbol, flew smaller, beneath the Stark flag but present. Arya stopped on a ridge where she and Bran once launched acorn volleys at passing riders. Snow ghosts quickened her pulse. She almost felt Bran teeter beside her, eyes bright with mischief. She breathed deep, exhaled steam, whispered, "We came home." Down the slope she dismounted, slung reins over her shoulder, and picked a path past root cellars recently dug. A new septee stood half-finished near the holdfast wall, stone blocks stacked but unmortar-ed. Masons hammered rhythmically. The sounds felt alien. Winterfell's heart had always beat to forge and kennel bark, not sept bells. She swallowed. At the gate 3 guards halted her. One wore maester's chains tucked under cloak. Another bore the black and green bear of Mormont. He peered at her hooded face. Name and purpose. Arya tipped back her cowl, the first unveiling of her own skin on northern soil in years. Wind chilled tears at corners of her eyes. Arya Stark, daughter of Lord Eddard, returned. Guard jaws slackened. The maester's chain clinked as he bent for clearer view. "God speak good," he whispered. He beckoned a runner, barked. "Inform Lord Stark at once." Within minutes, the yard bustled. Stable boys stared wide-eyed. A direwolf pup, lean and silver, loped near and sniffed her boots. One of Grey Wind's or Nymeria's wilder kin? She crouched, palm out, but it dashed off barking with excitement. Then a familiar shape strode from the great keep. Tall, broad-shouldered, black curls shot through with frost. Cloak of black knights, watch wool over stark gray, Jon. His eyes found her across the yard, and widened, till hope spilled out like sunrise over snow. She forgot faces, masks, every careful stride. She ran, boots echoing off stone. He caught her mid-charge, arms wrapping and lifting as if she weighed feathers. She buried her face in his chest, inhaled smoke and pine and salt. Words clogged her throat, until all that escaped was a ragged laugh that tasted of tears. "I knew you'd come," he murmured, voice deepened by command yet cracked on the last syllable. "I was always coming," she answered against his collar. He set her down and stepped back, hands heavy on her shoulders, as though fearing she'd vanish. "Let me look at you." She met his gaze, letting him read years in lines carved around her eyes. He smiled through wet lashes. "Little sister." No, no longer little. Footsteps approached. Sansa in gray-blue wool trimmed with white fox. Crown of northern silver glinting at brow. Her breath hitched. "Arya," she said, voice trembling between pride and apology. They clasped hands first. Hesitant, then embraced, stiff formalities melting in shared memory of a mother's songs and a father's justice. Arya smelled rose oil in Sansa's braid, but beneath it fear and fortitude. One by one others gathered, Davos Seaworth with weathered kindness, Lady Lyanna Mormont fierce and small, a tall woman in battered armor, Brian of Tarth, regarding Arya with soft wonder. Ghosts padded forth, enormous white direwolf silent except for Snow Crunch. He sniffed Arya, then brushed her knuckles with cold nose. Acceptance delivered. The yard rang with murmurs. Another Stark, come home. Bells tolled from the half-built sept in celebration. In the great hall that night, they feasted on boar pies and trout baked with almond. Music trilled from harp and flute. Yet beneath merriment tension coiled. Southern queens, dragons, precarious alliances. Arya sensed strategies swirling around Jon and Sansa, subtle as tourney banners shifting in wind. She sat beside Brienne, opposite Davos, fielding questions with clipped answers. When Sansa broached her journeys, Arya spoke only. "I learned to serve the many-faced god, but I serve family first." Later she stood atop the battlements, gazing beyond torches to rippling darkness. Jon joined her, cloak billowing. "Storm's coming," he said. "Storms always come." He glanced sidelong. "You carry weight in your eyes." "So do you." She hesitated, then asked. "Dragons truly landed at White Harbor?" "One dragon, small compared to tales, but enough to stir hearts. Queen Daenerys sent envoys. Grain for peace, fire for traitors." Jon's tone mixed admiration and dread. "I fought beside her in the south. The Night King is dead." He paused. "Your needlework may rest." Needle, her sword, rest. She touched its hilt beneath cloak. "Lists shorten, but some names remain." Jon sighed. "King's Landing still royals. Cersei holds the Red Keep with sellswords. Daenerys wants her crown." He fixed her with plea-steady gaze. "I would keep you safe from that fire." Arya's laugh was snow on steel. "Safe? I crossed seas, killed Freys, Slip dead faces. Safety is a lie. She softened. But I'll not rush south yet. The North needs every Stark inside these walls. Even as she said it, she felt the faces in her cloak stir like restless ravens, promises scratching to be flown. But for now, she would roost here, mend old bonds, train young wolves. Wind rose, carrying scents of wood smoke, horses, looming winter. Arya tilted her head, hearing echo of Nymeria's distant howl. Somewhere out there ran the pack she'd once set free, guardians of forests now slowly healing. She placed palms on rough stone, grounding herself. Jon spoke again, voice quieter than wind. Father used to stand here and say the man who passes sentence must swing the sword. You and I, we've both swung. Arya nodded. But the sentences still come. Below, in Torchglow Courtyard, she saw children, bastard boys and serving girls, practicing wooden swords under old Sir Roderick's successor. Their laughter rang clear. She watched one skinny girl parry clumsily and fall, then rise with determined scowl. Arya's heart quickened. She remembered that stance, those bruised knuckles. Tomorrow, she would ask to teach footwork, show them how to dance, water dancer quick across stone. For tonight, she let Winterfell's stone settle beneath her boots, felt the walls accept her weight like a long-avoided truth sliding home. The journey was not ended. The many-faced god still waited for one queen's golden hair and a headsman's mute tongue. But vengeance could bide. Family was breath. Home was pause. She inhaled cold northern air until lungs ached sweet, then turned from the parapet. Within the hall firelight beckoned. Stories to share, plans to forge, a name to bear proudly once more. Needle at her hip whispered steel promise with each stride. Tomorrow, she thought, we begin again. And somewhere, far beyond the King's Road and Riverlands, the whisper of her steps traveled down corridors of masks and bravos, rousing faces from dusty slumber. They listened perhaps, and wondered which of them she would one day choose to wear again. If ever she chose anything but the honest skin, now warmed by Winterfell's hearth. For now, Arya Stark chose herself, chose the living, and walked into home's embrace like a blade slid into a well-oiled sheath. Still dangerous, but at rest, until drawn.